For I am not ashamed of the gospel, because it is the power of God that brings salvation to everyone who believes, first to the Jew, then to the Gentile. For in the gospel the righteousness of God is revealed, a righteousness that is by faith from first to last, just as it is written, "The righteous will live by faith." The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people, who suppress the truth by their wickedness, since what may be known about God is plain to them, because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. Therefore God gave them over in the sinful desires of their hearts to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies with one another. They exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is forever praised. Amen. Because of this, God gave them over to shameful lusts. Even their women exchanged natural sexual relations for unnatural ones. In the same way, the men also abandoned natural relations with women, and were inflamed with lust for one another. Men committed shameful acts with other men, and received in themselves the due penalty for their error. Furthermore, just as they did not think it worthwhile to retain the knowledge of God, so God gave them over to a depraved mind, so that they do what ought not to be done. They have become filled with every kind of wickedness, evil, greed, and depravity. They are full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. They are gossips, slanderers, God-haters, insolent, arrogant, and boastful. They invent ways of doing evil. They disobey their parents. They have no understanding, no fidelity, no love, no mercy. Although they know God's righteous decree that those who do such things deserve death, they not only continue to do these very things, but also approve of those who practice them. The book of Romans is a cornerstone of Christian theology. Written by Apostle Paul around 57 AD, addressed to the Christian community in Rome. The first chapter sets the tone for the entire epistle. Romans chapter 1 introduces Paul's message. Its relevance to modern society is striking. Themes of truth, morality, and human behavior resonate today. Its message applies to our world, challenging and inspiring readers. Paul begins Romans chapter 1 by introducing himself as a servant of Jesus Christ. He emphasizes his calling as an apostle. This establishes his authority to speak on matters of faith. Paul's message is one of unwavering commitment to the gospel of Christ. The apostle expresses his eagerness to preach the gospel in Rome. He sees it as his duty to share the good news with both Jews and Gentiles. This inclusivity is a key aspect of Paul's ministry. It reflects the universal nature of the Christian message. Paul's declaration that he is not ashamed of the gospel resonates today. In a world often hostile to religious beliefs, his words inspire courage. Many believers face ridicule or persecution for their faith. Paul's bold stance encourages them to remain steadfast. The concept of faith as a transformative power is central to Paul's message. He speaks of the gospel as the power of God for salvation. This idea challenges modern notions of self-reliance and personal achievement. It offers hope to those who feel powerless in the face of life's struggles. Romans chapter 1 takes a sobering turn as Paul discusses the wrath of God. This concept may seem at odds with modern sensibilities. Many today prefer to focus on God's love and mercy. However, Paul presents God's wrath as a response to human wickedness. The idea of divine judgment remains relevant in our time. It raises questions about accountability and justice. In a world where injustice often seems to prevail, Paul's words offer a different perspective. They suggest that ultimately wrongdoing will not go unchecked. Paul's description of God's wrath being revealed from heaven speaks to a cosmic drama. It presents a view of reality that extends beyond the material world. This challenges the secular worldview dominant in many societies today. It invites readers to consider the spiritual dimension of existence. The apostle's words about the suppression of truth and unrighteousness are particularly poignant. In an era of fake news and alternative facts, truth often seems elusive. Paul's assertion that truth can be known but is willfully ignored resonates with current debates. It challenges us to examine our own relationship with truth. Paul's depiction of moral decline in Romans chapter 1 is strikingly relevant today. He describes a society that has turned away from God. This leads to a downward spiral of immoral behavior. Many see parallels in contemporary culture's shifting moral landscape. The apostle speaks of people becoming futile in their thoughts. This echoes concerns about the impact of modern media and technology on our thinking. The constant barrage of information and entertainment can lead to mental confusion. It can make it difficult to focus on deeper truths. Paul's words about the foolish heart being darkened resonate in our time. We live in an age of unprecedented knowledge and technological advancement, yet many feel a sense of emptiness and purposelessness. This paradox reflects the spiritual dimension of human nature that Paul addresses. The chapter's description of people professing to be wise but becoming fools is particularly relevant. In an era of self-proclaimed experts and influencers, discernment is crucial. Paul's words challenge us to examine the foundations of our beliefs and values. They remind us that true wisdom comes from acknowledging God. Section 5. Idolatry in Modern Society. Romans chapter 1 speaks strongly against idolatry. Paul criticizes those who worship created things rather than the Creator. This theme remains highly relevant in our materialistic society. Modern idols may not be carved images, but they are no less real. Today's idols often take the form of wealth, fame, or power. Many people pursue these goals with religious fervor. The worship of celebrities and the obsession with social media likes reflect modern idolatry. Paul's words challenge us to examine what we truly value. The apostle's statement that people exchange the glory of the incorruptible God for an image is profound. It speaks to the human tendency to create gods in our own image. This is evident in how some reshape religious beliefs to fit personal preferences. It's also seen in the elevation of human ideologies to quasi-religious status. Paul's critique of idolatry extends to the worship of nature. This has relevance in our environmentally conscious age. While care for creation is important, Paul warns against elevating nature above its creator. This challenges both extreme environmentalism and materialistic worldviews that deny any higher reality. Section 6. Sexual immorality in contemporary culture. Romans chapter 1 addresses sexual immorality as a consequence of turning away from God. This topic remains highly controversial in our sexually liberated culture. The chapter's teachings challenge many modern attitudes towards sexuality. Paul speaks of people being given over to vile passions. He describes same-sex relationships as against nature. These statements are deeply offensive to many today. They highlight the tension between biblical teaching and contemporary views on sexual ethics. Section 7. The rejection of truth. Paul's discussion of the rejection of truth in Romans chapter 1 is highly relevant today. He speaks of those who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. This resonates in our post-truth era. Many today question the very concept of objective truth. The apostle asserts that God's existence and nature are evident in creation. He argues that people are without excuse for not acknowledging God. This challenges the prevalent secular worldview. It also raises questions about the relationship between faith and reason. Paul's statement that people exchange the truth of God for the lie is particularly poignant. It speaks to the human tendency to believe what we want to believe. This is evident in the spread of conspiracy theories and the rejection of scientific consensus. It challenges us to examine our own biases and willingness to face uncomfortable truths. The chapter's portrayal of a downward spiral resulting from the rejection of truth is sobering. Paul sees this as leading to a debased mind. This has relevance in discussions about the moral and intellectual state of society. It invites reflection on the consequences of relativism and moral subjectivism. Section 8. The consequences of turning from God. Romans chapter 1 outlines severe consequences for turning away from God. Paul describes God giving people over to their sinful desires. This presents a challenging view of divine judgment. The list of vices that Paul provides is striking in its relevance to modern society. He mentions greed, envy, murder, strife, deceit, and maliciousness. These behaviors are all too familiar in our world. They are evident in everything from corporate scandals to social media conflicts. Section 9. The role of conscience in today's world. Romans chapter 1 touches on the role of conscience in human behavior. Paul suggests that even those without the law have an innate sense of right and wrong. This concept of natural law remains relevant in discussions of ethics and morality. The idea of conscience as a moral guide challenges modern relativism. It suggests that there are universal moral truths. This has implications for how we approach ethical dilemmas in fields like medicine, business, and politics. Paul's assertion that people knowing the righteous judgment of God still choose to sin is profound. It speaks to the complexity of human nature. We often act against our better judgment. This insight is relevant to discussions about addiction, habitual sin, and moral weakness. The concept of conscience also relates to issues of guilt and mental health. Many today struggle with feelings of guilt or shame. Paul's teachings suggest that these feelings may serve a purpose. They can prompt us to examine our actions and seek reconciliation with God and others. Section 10. The universal nature of sin. Romans chapter 1 presents a universal indictment of human sinfulness. Paul argues that all people, both Jews and Gentiles, are under sin's power. This challenges notions of human goodness and self-righteousness. It remains a provocative message in our self-esteem-focused culture. The apostles' portrayal of sin as a universal human condition is relevant to discussions of social issues. It suggests that societal problems stem from a deeper spiritual malaise. This perspective challenges purely secular approaches to solving human problems. Paul's teachings on sin also relate to the concept of human rights. If all people are equally sinful, it follows that all have equal dignity and worth. This has implications for how we treat others, especially those different from us. The universal nature of sin in Romans 1 challenges us to examine our own lives. It invites self-reflection and humility. In a world often divided by self-righteousness and judgment, this message is particularly relevant. It calls us to compassion and understanding in our dealings with others. Romans 1 in the 21st century. Its relevance to modern society is clear. Themes of truth, morality, and human behavior are as pertinent now as ever. It provides a lens to view contemporary issues. Warnings about rejecting God resonate in our secular age. Parallels exist between moral decline and current trends, reflect on faith and social well-being. Romans 1 challenges contemporary values. Its teachings on sexual morality and divine judgment are controversial. Even those who disagree must grapple with these issues. It prompts discussions about ethics and truth. Romans chapter 1 speaks to the human condition. It addresses our struggles with truth and moral failings. In confusion and despair, Paul's message offers hope. It points to a source of meaning and purpose. This is its most relevant aspect for our troubled times.